So there is a male wrist that drops from Workshop that gives you stats when you take nature damage. This wrist actually gives a lot of stats, totaling to 2000 secondaries at 665 eye level, which is 60% more stats than an ordinary wrist. On an encounter that goes close to 100% uptime, these wrists are almost a 1% DPS gain over equivalent item level and 0.5% DPS gain over 675 crafted wrist, making the gold-coded superconductors BIS on certain encounters. So what procs them is not actually all nature damage. I am not sure what the rules are, but a lot of instances of nature damage just do not proc it at all, including the symbiosis embellishment. You can't use that, you have to get the buff naturally from the boss damage. I'll go over what actually works to proc them on every raid boss. Here's a quick sheet. There are 5 bosses you should definitely use them for, and 2 bosses you should never use them, and Gallywix is a maybe. On Vexie, you can have around 90% uptime, but you have to purposefully stand in the oil slick once every minute to proc them. This boss doesn't do much damage, so it is pretty safe to dip in and out to do this. On Cauldron, it naturally procs whenever toys are kicked into each other, so you passively have around 95% uptime regardless of which side you are on. On Rik, nothing procs the wrists. Even though there is nature damage in the fight, it doesn't work. Unequip them for Rik. On Stix, they passively proc from the dot caused by burning rubbish. This doesn't naturally start until phase 2, so you could see lower uptimes if people are doing the mechanic properly. However, if someone burns trash 40 seconds in, it will proc there for a 90% uptime. On Sprocket, they passively proc to the polarized mechanic, giving you a free 95% uptime. On one-armed Bandit, they do not proc enough. They only proc when you are specifically targeted by a real assistant, and this can target one person between 0 and 6 times per fight. So it's very inconsistent, and even if you get targeted a lot, you will still only have about 60% uptime, meaning you should unequip on one-armed Bandit. On Vexie, you passively gain the buff whenever a drone shoots out a surging arc at you or someone nearby. This happens very often, and you will typically have about 90% uptime entirely passively. And on Gallywix, it is a bit inconsistent. You get the buff on every suppression cast, which starts a minute in and persists to about 7 minutes. This alone is only about 60 to 65% uptime. In order to get it to 80%, you need to stand in melee in the P2 intermissions and have a juiced cast go off. Now, sometimes 1 or 2 of these do go off for little consequence. However, typically you would aim to CC them all, so I think the wrists will typically be neutral DPS on Gallywix. And in Mythic Plus, these wrists are useless and a massive DPS loss. There is simply not enough constant nature damage in these dungeons. And a quick note on how to get them: they are a drop from male users in the Mechagon Workshop dungeon on Hero Track. If you want them on Champion Track, you can actually go into M0 in a full male stack group and kill the first boss to be guaranteed a set of champion gold-coded superconductors.